Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Boris TV tutorial. And in this lesson, we're going to talk about a fantastic new tool inside of Boris Continuum Complete 9, and of course I'm talking about the FX browser. Now, one thing that you always hear me say in a lot of my tutorials is that Boris Continuum Complete is not just an effects package. It's actually a package of, yes, great looking effects, but also a package of fantastic and essential tools that you need to get your job done. Now, one thing I do want to point out before we move on is that there's actually two versions, believe it or not, of the FX browser. There's the integrated FX browser, and what does that mean exactly? Well, that means is that integrated, built into every effect inside of Boris Continuum Complete 9, you're going to notice up at the top we have a new little menu of which one of the buttons says, appropriately enough, Open Browser. So we can open the FX browser right here from within the effect itself, but what we also have the ability to do is to open the browser as its own separate effect. Now you're probably thinking, well, why would I ever want to do that? Well, I'm going to show you why in a few minutes, so keep that in the back of your head. Now, of course, to get into the FX browser, like I said, very simple. All I'm going to do is simply click on Open Browser, and once I do, here's the FX browser ready to go. Now it's divided up into three windows. You'll see on the left hand side here we have the presets. Now by default it's always going to pick the first effect, which in this case is A, Touch of Fog. Now you'll see, of course, because it's A, it's alphabetical order, that's why it picked a Touch of Fog first. Now, like I said, we have the preset window over here, we have the preview window, and then down here at the bottom we have the history. Now we're going to talk in depth about each one of these windows right now. Now let's talk about the presets first, because in most cases what you're going to do is you're going to start clicking on presets just to see what each one of them do, or what each one of them looks like. Now in this case you'll see right now my thumbnails are fairly small. In many cases you don't need to find yourself clicking through all of these different looks to find the one that you want. What you can actually do is just increase the size of the thumbnail, and in a lot of cases you're going to get a pretty good idea of what these presets are going to look like without actually having to click on each one. You can actually narrow things down. I might say, okay, well, you know what, Classic Sepia is one that I always like. I'm just going to take a look at that one. Well, that's looking pretty good right there. Now what we also have the ability to do is to get in and search for presets as well. Now this is sort of more relevant when you get into the effects like Lens Flare 3D, or even when you're using the standalone version of the FX browser. But in this case, if I wanted to see all of the effects that have anything to do with sepia, all I need to do is simply come up to the search. I'm going to type in sepia, just like such. I'm going to hit enter, and I now have two effects. Now you're going to see that I have the Classic Sepia and I have something that's called Turn Sepia, but when I click on it, it doesn't look like anything has happened. Well, believe it or not, something has happened. These are actually two different types of presets. One is a static preset and one is an animated preset. Now, how do I know the difference? Well, I know the difference very easily. Right down here, you'll see that the Classic Sepia's extension is .bsp, Boris Static Preset. And of course, with the Sepia one, it's called Boris Animated Preset. Now, of course, that does beg the question, how do I know inside an effects category what effects are animated and which ones are not? Well, that's actually very easy to find out. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove Sepia from the search. And what we want to do is we're going to take a look at our presets in a little bit of a different way. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on List View. Now in List View, of course, it's going to list all the names of the different presets. It's going to tell me what the filter name is and what the category is. But what more importantly it's going to tell me is what type of preset it is. Is it a static preset or an animated preset? And the great thing is that I can simply get in and sort by the preset type to see all of the static presets together, or all of the animated presets together. And of course I can reverse the view here to see all the animated ones at the top followed by the static ones. Now of course, like I said, when you get in and you apply the Turn Sepia effect, we don't actually see anything happen. What I'm going to do is just switch back to thumbnail view here. Now the reason that we don't see anything happen is because this effect, or this preset, takes place over time. Now in this case, when we apply the animated preset, it's going to apply the preset and have it happen over the entire duration of the clip. Okay, so let's talk about the actual preview window now, since we've sort of gone from the preset window over here to the preview window. Now what I'm going to do here, just for purposes of working, I'm just going to shrink my thumbnails back down, because you know what? I might actually want a little bit more screen real estate with my family here. So what I can actually do is take all of these windows and just move them to give me as much or as little space as I want here. You can see, very cool. And what I also have the ability to do is to simply navigate up here to Window, and much like in After Effects, I can come in and I can save out different workspaces depending on how I like to work. So I might have 3 different workspaces. I might have a small one depending on what computer I'm working on. I might have bigger ones, where I have lots of screen real estate, like in the case that I'm in right now. But that's the best part about the preset browser and really about BCC in general. You really can work how you like to work. Okay, but we are talking about the preview window, so let's come back over here. Let's click on the preview window. Now, the first thing that in most cases you're going to do when you apply a preset, and let's actually just apply a sepia preset here. I'm just going to take classic sepia and just apply it. Now, I've applied the preset, very simple. I clicked on it, it appears. But what I want to do is I actually want to see what this is going to look like over top of moving video. So all I'm going to do is simply hit the space bar. Now, what's important to keep in mind is that you'll see actually right down here in the lower left-hand corner, I'm only previewing this at half speed, 15 frames per second. You know what? I really would like to see this at full speed. Well, what's actually happening here when I hit the space bar is that it's actually buffering this into the RAM of my computer. Now, because I started at the beginning, obviously it went through the full clip and then started playing it back real time. Now, if I had started at the halfway point, what it would do is it would preview all the way to the end, start back at the beginning, still buffering into the RAM, and then once it caught up to the point where I had started it, then it's going to start to play back in real time again. Very cool. Very handy. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the controls that we have here at the bottom of the preview window. The first one is fairly self-explanatory. I have the ability to basically rewind right back to the beginning. So if I wanted to come back and just preview this, boom, there we go. Now, of course, again, I have the ability to go frame by frame, but you know what? You might not want to actually do that by clicking on the little frame by frame button, because you can also use the left and right arrow keys on the keyboard. What I should also point out is that over here in the presets, I do also have the ability to go through the presets by simply going along using the up, down, left, and right arrow keys on the keyboard. So you see, very cool. Okay, next, of course, fairly self-explanatory. Much like the spacebar, I can simply hit the play key. Now, of course, again, it's going to preview this into RAM. Again, I can stop. You'll see again I can move forward frame by frame. I also have the ability to get in and adjust the resolution of my clip. Now, I knew going in that this clip was 1920 by 1080, and I knew that I was only working at half resolution. Now, how did I know that? Well, because right over here you'll see the dimensions are set to 960 by 540, which is half the resolution of 1920 by 1080. What I also have the ability to do right here is to get in and choose how I want to composite. Now I'm going to explain this a little bit more when I talk about the standard FX browser. We're actually going to use an example of having a title in there and how you can actually get in and apply these cool presets to a title. But like I said, we're going to get to that in a few minutes. Okay, last but certainly not least, a fantastic feature from Boris Continuum Complete in a previous version of the effects package. We can actually come in and turn compare mode on. I can actually come in and I can compare side by side if I wanted to, but for me, in most cases, I like to have the old split screen here. And of course, I do have the ability to get in and adjust the split screen however I want. Of course, I can preview it like this as well. Very cool. So you can see a before and after. You'll see this is even previewing right now at 24 frames per second. There we go. Boom. Previewing. Full frame. Of course, half res, but 24 frames per second. Now, something else I do want to point out here, 2 things actually. What happens if you have a producer sitting at the back of the room? You'll always have that. An editor will be working, a producer will be sitting behind you, and the last thing you want to be doing is keep calling them up, hey, can you come up and take a look at, what I'm doing here? Why wouldn't you rather just show them what you're doing full screen? What you can actually do is simply use the tilde key on the keyboard, which is the key located right below the escape key in the upper left-hand corner of the keyboard, to switch over to full frame mode, just like that. Now we can actually see everything in full frame. Very cool. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to stop that because I don't need to see that anymore. What we're going to do is we're just going to send us back to the standard view here. And of course, I might not want to preview the entire length of the clip. Maybe I only want to preview, a couple seconds. Well, of course, we can get in and we can actually adjust whatever range that we want to preview. And of course, as soon as I hit the space bar, it's only going to preview that range. So now we can get a quick preview of this playing back in real time. Now, of course, down here at the bottom, we do have the history. Now, the history can be viewed exactly the way that we viewed the presets by taking a look at it in list view. Of course, we can then see the difference between the static and the animated presets, or we can view it in thumbnail view. Again, of course, we have the ability to get in and adjust the size of the thumbnails as well. And if we wanted to apply one of these, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to navigate up. I'm just going to turn compare mode off here. We have the classic sepia on there. Maybe I'll turn early morning mist on. Why not? We'll just change it up a little bit. All I'm going to do now is simply say apply, And that preset is now applied to the clip that I had the effect applied to in my composition. Now I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come in, let's have some fun with this. I'm just going to take this, let's just start cranking some stuff all around all over the place. Doesn't even really matter what I'm creating here. It's just going to be something that looks completely out of whack, but something that we can actually see very easily inside of the effects browser. Okay? So sure, we're going to call this Kevin's Blue. So now that I have this, all I'm going to do is I'm simply going to save this. I'm going to call this Kevin's Crazy Blue Look. I'm simply going to say save. And we're just going to switch to something else. Let's just actually switch back to our classic sepia here. There we go. Now I know that I've created a couple presets in here and I want to see which ones I've created. So let's head back to the effects browser here. And all I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to head back to the search here. I'm just going to type in the word Kevin. I'm going to hit enter, and here are the two presets that I've created. A very, very sepia look. And of course, my crazy blue look that I can apply just like any other preset by simply clicking on it and saying apply. Now, something else I do want to mention, that if at any time you need help with either the FX browser or the effect that you've applied and the presets that go with it, you can simply find the help for both of them right up here. You can find the filter help file right here, or you can find the BCC effects browser help file located right here. Everything is just a click away. And of course, at this point, all I now need to do is simply come down and say apply, and this effect will be applied instantaneously to my footage. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the standalone FX browser. Okay, so let's remove the film process, and what we're going to do is we're going to come right up here to the top to the BCC browser. You'll see inside the BCC browser categories, of course, the BCC FX browser. All I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take it, and you'd think that I would drag and drop it onto my clip. Now I could of course do that, but what I had said earlier was I want to show you how this works with a title. So let's actually just take some text. I'm just going to type in Kevin's preset. Why not? And of course I'm going to use my favorite font, Impact. There we go, and I'm just going to increase the size of this text here. It doesn't even matter how big I make it. We'll just position it somewhere, you know, kind of right about there. It doesn't even really matter for the purposes of what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to take the FX browser, we're going to take it and we're going to apply it to this text right here. Now, of course, what I want to do, and this is very important, is I want to come up and I want to make sure that I set the background before I click on the FX browser launch window. What I want to do is set the background to be, of course, my clip from Digital Juice's Video Tracks HD. What I'm going to do now is call up the effects browser. And as soon as I do, you'll see that I now have the text over top of the video. Now, if for some reason you don't see that, it's very important to keep in mind that it's not that the FX browser is not working correctly, it's that we're not working it right. Because what we need to do, you'll remember from before I mentioned, keep this in the back of your head, is that right over here, we can actually come in and say, do we want to composite our title over black? Do we want to composite it over a checkerboard? Or do we want to composite it over a background? Now, of course, the preset browser will always remember what you were browsing previously before you came in and applied it this new time. Now, in this case, what I was doing was I was coming in and I believe I was taking a look at something like glow alpha edges or even emboss. I can select the emboss category. Now, of course, I have access to all the different presets and I can click through and take a look at all of them. Or I can come in, you know, for example, glow alpha edges and take a look at all these very cool presets. And of course, much like we had the ability to do inside of the integrated preset browser, in the history here, I'm just going to pull the window up here. Of course, we can look at this in frame view, or of course we can look at it in list view. Now, what's important to keep in mind is that the purpose of the standalone FX browser is for you to take a look at all of the effects across the entire category of BCC effects. You cannot actually apply any of these presets from the standalone version. Like I said, strictly for preview purposes. When you're done, all you're going to do is simply say close and nothing will be applied. But what you'll now know, and what I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to delete the title here, but like I said, what you'll now know is that you can actually come down and let's just come to lights, for example, because let's say we saw a cool lens flare or something like that. What you could do is simply come down to lens flare 3D, simply take it, drag it and drop it on here, simply come into the browser and say, you know what, I remember exactly what that was called. That was called Northern Star, and boom, there you go. There's the Northern Star preset, all set to go and be dropped into any project you happen to be working on. Now, one last thing that I do want to mention here, I'm just going to cancel out of this for a second. I'm going to come back to the effect that I was just using, which was film process. Let's come back to film process because there is something else that I do want to explain before I wrap up. So I'm just going to come into film style. We'll come to film process here. We'll just take it, drag and drop it, of course, right back into the preset browser. And that is that I'm going to come back to my list view. You'll see, of course, with our animated presets here, I'm just going to choose one of them. Let's choose our turn to sepia here. There we go. Very cool. Now, what's important to keep in mind is that, like I said earlier, when I apply this to a clip inside of the preview browser, it's going to take the preset, the animated preset, start it right here at the beginning and have it take place over the entire duration of the clip. But of course, what happens is that if I'm only previewing something, let's just say, right here at the beginning, I'm not actually going to see what's going on properly with this unless I actually preview everything. But what's important to keep in mind is that once you've selected this animated preset and you say apply, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to be prompted by Boris Continuum Complete 9 saying, hold on a second. This clip is obviously longer than the animation preset you're applying it to. So what do you want to do as far as stretching it out? Do you want to preserve the timing of the preset, or do you want to stretch it to go across the entire clip? Then, as far as the offset goes, do you want to start at the current frame that After Effects is parked at, or do you want to start at the first frame? Well, for me, I'm going to want to stretch it to fit, and I'm going to want to start it at the first frame. And now that turn to sepia takes place over the entire duration of my clip. So I hope this tutorial has shown you why the FX browser is going to become such an integral part of your workflow. Not only is it a fantastic way to get in and preview all of these great presets inside of Boris Continuum Complete 9, you're going to be able to do it lightning quick. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to support@borisfx.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.